So, as you may know, the End of Anlia is something that I spent a long time writing a book about, but what I wanted to see what Google Gemini would do if left to its own devices. So, or literally a device. So I made this I made Gemini create a storybook using the laws of Anlia and a simple prompt in addition to that. And I'm mainly making this video so that I can link the YouTube video back into Gemini and then ask it to determine the difference between them. I have to make this public for it to do that, but note that it's not the public that I intend to see it. Without further ado, I will share my screen and show you the video. I have to move this away.
The breaking of the glass rings. In the heart of Anlia, the sky was not a sky at all, but a shimmering ceiling of data. Soren sat within his
So the one thing it
spatial
didn't
environment
get was that
castle,
Anlia
or
floats on the
city
ocean,
seat, where the air was
but
always a
that's actually
perfect
accurate.
70 degrees and the light never flickered. Around his limbs, the automated restraint suit, the ARS,
I'm not sure if
pulsed
I
with a
actually wrote
low,
that
rhythmic hum.
in the prompt.
It was a second skin, designed to keep him in a state of ditto, a fixed
Again, it
period of
misinterprets what
perfect,
d.vmod
unrepeated
means.
compliance.
Did that in the last
To the
one as
government
well.
of Alien, a body in ditto was a body that could never commit a crime. The ARS was programmed to monitor the 16 dimensions of law. If Soren's heart rate spiked at the thought of violence, the suit tightened. If he spoke of
This
forbidden
is roughly
substances or
accurate.
questioned the rigid age gap protocols of the city, the suit grew heavy. Even the way he spent his credits was monitored. Money was the 16th dimension,
There's a
and
very
it flowed
specific thing.
only
It's
in
listed in
straight,
Anlia. It's
symmetrical
very
lines.
complicated.
Soren
In
stood before
the
the Stardust
Anlia
store
playlist, it's
interface,
very
fingers
complicated. It's
hovering
not
over the
exactly
light
that many
stream.
works like
He
that.
wasn't printing food or clothing today. He was printing a question. The device Soren printed was a circular key,
And that's how you would actually
rich in the
dismantle
symmetrical
Anlia from the
logic of
inside.
Anlia.
The laws
As the
regulate what
printer
you can
hovered,
print
his
only
fingertips
available
gestured,
within
then
specific
flicked
domains
his
of what, sorry,
finger's chest. Unauthorized.
sorry. That's actually how you would dismantle Anlia from the inside. The laws that regulate the Stardust printer vary based on what you're trying to print. So there are laws for food, and there are laws for weapons, and there are laws whether you're allowed to have weapons in different sectors or in different sects, but there are no laws that regard devices used to disrupt the other devices. And that's kind of where you would, even in my own story, that's how they dismantled Anlia. I'd say that's accurate.
Thought detected. A synthetic voice whispered in his ear. In Anlia, symmetry was the ultimate virtue. Symmetrical relationships, symmetrical architecture, and a pluralism that kept every group in its own isolated box.
Accurate.
But Soren dreamt of a circular society, where every point was connected to the center and to each other. A true democracy, instead of a collection of glass walls. Because of his deviant cognitive patterns, Soren was reassigned. He was moved from his safe SEC to a holding SEC.
So that law actually doesn't really exist in Anlia. I think he would probably go to the penal SEC himself because because he just wants to break the law, or he would go to the penal SEC to find people who would break other laws that this device is supposed to allow them to break. They can break the laws. Of course, the whole point of Anlia is that once you go to the penal sec, you can break the law that the penal sec is a penal sec for. So it's not really a matter of like absolute freedom to do this or not do this. Um, in my original story, I sort of mentioned a hyperneural or a web of different brains. I've sort of understood that that means that what you do to someone else isn't what they do to you. Like you have something done to you and you do something else to the next person or the same person or the first person. And that's kind of what he means by circular rather than symmetrical relationships.
A cold, translucent sphere suspended in a massive hangar. A peacekeeper, clad in a heavy duty ARS that looked more like armor than a suit, escorted him through the gantry. Soren watched the other capsules pass by. Penal SECs, where the air was thin, and test SECs, where citizens were subjected to psychological stressors to measure.
So, test SECs are not quite like that. The test SEC means they test whether you're going to break the law, which on some level is the same thing, but the idea is they're trying to place someone in the penal sack when they break the law. And this is as opposed to the safe sack where it's impossible to break the law in the first place.
Their mott, their potential for momentum and change. In the holding SEC, Soren met Coda. She was a legend among the whispers of the underground, a woman who had spent years studying the Dito versus Mott term system. Her ARS was scarred and pitted, the metal worn down by constant resistance. She looked at Soren's circular key and smiled. They think symmetry is balance, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the.
So again, symmetry means that if they went to a penal sack, he could do something to her and she could do the same thing to him. Whereas circular means that he could do something to her, she could do something else to another person, and then the chain would continue until resources flowed back to him.
The hum of the hangar. But a circle is the only shape that can roll. It's time we gave this world some momentum. Coda explained that the 16 dimensions of law were not there to protect them, but to prevent Mott. By regulating food, speech, and even the way people age together, the system ensured that no two people could ever truly align. They give us pluralism to keep us apart, Coda said, her eyes burning with a rebellious light. They tell us every group is equal, so that no group can ever unite. But a circle has no corners to hide in. A circle is a single, unbroken line. The ARS uses the 16 dimensions to anchor us, Soren realized, holding the circular key aloft. If we can disrupt the signal, the detour will break. We can turn their pluralism into a democracy of the whole. Coda nodded, reaching out to touch the key. As their hands met, the ARS suits on both their arms began to hiss. The system sensed the unauthorized connection, a breach of the symmetry law. The suits began to lock their joints, trying to freeze them in place. Soren slammed the circular key into the central port of his own ARS. A wave of red light exploded outward, traveling through the hangar's floor. The 16 dimensions of law began to flicker and fail. The constraints on speech vanished, and Soren felt a roar of words building in his throat. The constraints on movement snapped, and for the first time in his life, his limbs felt light.
So he could have done any of that in a penal sec without breaking the law. But this is for the purpose of creating circular societies.
He wasn't just a point in a system, he was a force of nature. The red pulse hit the SECs. The glass walls of the holding, penal, and test capsules didn't shatter. They dissolved. Thousands of people, suddenly freed from the weight of their ARS suits, looked around in confusion and then wonder. Hoda stood beside Soren, watching as the rigid, symmetrical rows of the city began to blur. The hierarchy was dismantling itself. The people weren't just individuals in pods anymore. They were a crowd, a sea, a circle. Anlia would never be the same. An age of Dito was over, and the era of Mott had begun. As the sun, a real sun, breaking through the digital haze, began to rise.
Okay, so I'm gonna give some context here. The original story, that I even tried to, put the original story into the AI and have it make that a version of that. The original story did the same thing, but I did not prompt it to. Or I did not prompt this story to do it. The original story did a thing where the people of the new society lived in nature, whereas the people in Anlia lived in closed virtual environments. Interesting.
Soren realized that democracy wasn't about being the same. It was about the freedom to move together. No more capsules, no more restraints, just the infinite rolling potential of a world that had finally found its curve.
And I think this may be better or worse. I think most people will say that my version was better because it was not AI, but I feel like people put too much stake in whether something is AI in as opposed to really caring about the content. I mean, I know that the original took me a week to write 4 hours a day, and this took me like 15 minutes of, or actually maybe like 2 minutes of copying and pasting things that I had already written, and 15 minutes of walking home, listening to another video as the AI did its thing. Uh, I always say that like one thing I like to say is that the when the AI does the work for me, I'm more likely to let the AI redo the work because if I did the work, I would have invested so much in it that I wouldn't want to do that again, even if it was subpar. It's kind of and I am going to love my work regardless of whether it's good or bad. That's kind of the way I am. You know, I'm not going to want to make it perfect. I'd say a lot of people are not like that, but if it's someone else, if it's the work of the AI, I'm more likely to let it redo it. And I'm not gonna redo my own stuff. But stop share and record.